Good morning and welcome to our talk today about Azure Automation. We're really excited to be representing the Azure Automation team. We've done a lot of work in the past year to bring a lot of really cool features into our product. And so I'm Chris Sanders, and I'm a program manager on the automation team. And my colleague is Beth Cooper, another program manager.
Hi.
And we get the privilege of presenting for the team today a lot of the really neat stuff that we've done. So in this session today, we're going to give you a very brief introduction to Azure Automation and some of the scenarios that it can enable, some of the value prop for Azure Automation. We're going to talk about a new automation UX. We've moved from the classic Azure portal into what's called the new preview portal, which has a lot of cool features. We're going to talk about some new authoring capabilities that we have. We've improved the textual authoring capability for creating PowerShell workflows. And we've also created a brand new graphical authoring feature. For those of you who are using Orchestrator right now, you'll see the value prop in being able to create your runbooks graphically. We're going to give you a demo that kind of runs through the entire talk today. It's going to highlight all of these various features and highlight the integration capabilities of the automation service. We're going to talk about another feature we have, which is the ability to create hybrid runbook workers. So if you don't want to run your workloads and your automation in the cloud, you can run them down on your own on-prem machines if you want. Another feature we're going to demonstrate is webhooks. So you can create a webhook to a particular runbook, and then you can use that webhook anywhere to call back and start that runbook from places like GitHub, Visual Studio Online, or your own custom portal. And finally, we'll sum up our demo, including the webhooks and hybrid, and then we'll summarize the demonstration. So, when we are working on creating the automation features for you, we're always looking at the automation trends right now. And, the standard automation that we've been doing for years and years is based on enterprise data centers, IT operations, IT processes. But we're moving into a cloud world, and that transition is happening right now. And that's opening up a whole another suite of scenarios for automation to work against. For instance, you might have your workload still on premise, but you're starting to use some cloud providers. So you may have a hybrid scenario. And so you need to work on provisioning against different cloud providers, your private cloud, and so we need to have tools that enable that sort of work. Another trend is the enabling of self-service IT offerings. So enterprise IT and hosters are being asked more and more to provide their services as self-service offerings. And those self-service offerings are going to be backed by automation to make them efficient. So that's another trend that's driving more and more automation into the IT workspace. And another one is DevOps. This is continuous deployment, continuous integration of applications as they're being developed. And again, that just cannot happen efficiently without automation. And another trend that's happening is what we call modern management. And this is where you're starting to see management more and more as a service. Folks who are familiar with ServiceNow, that is a cloud service. And you're starting to see this happen because there's a lot of advantages to starting to run your management in the cloud. For one, you don't have to manage the management tools themselves. You know that managing System Center takes a lot of time and effort, but if it's in the cloud, we're doing that management, you just use the tools. Another is you get a very fast time to value when you're using cloud services as your management tool. You can just instantly start getting value from them. Another is that we're seeing automation across heterogeneous environments. You have Windows, you have Linux, you have VMware, you have different cloud providers. And so you need to automate into these different spaces. And finally, you need to be able to automate at scale, where you're going to have time where you have to scale up and scale down, and you need automation to handle all of that. So when we talk about the value prop for automation, basically you're operating your automation, your operational tasks, and one of the goals is to achieve delivery very quickly. More and more, the whole IT space is speeding up. You're expected to deliver things faster and faster. And the old ways of doing that manually just won't scale to that type of demand now. And so that's where automation is coming in. And when you look at an automation platform, you're going to need the ability to author the automation pieces that you have, whether they be runbooks, whether it be configurations, what have you. You're going to need to be able to create integrations to all the various systems that you have and be able to do that very efficiently and cleanly. And then finally, you're going to need to be able to operate your automation space itself and troubleshoot and et cetera. So when we talk about automation, we talk about integration, integrating with different systems. And in particular with Azure automation, integration with other systems is actually very easy. And that's one of the reasons we moved to the PowerShell workflow engine, is because there's a huge community of PowerShell providers out there, PowerShell modules. Almost every major system has a PowerShell module to integrate into it. And if they don't have a PowerShell module, they usually have a REST API, so it's very easy to make a PowerShell module to actually work against that system. When you orchestrate your processes, you actually bring reliability now to your processes. You say, this happens now, if this happens, this happens. If you automate all that, you've created a workflow, you've tested it, the next time you run it, you get all that predictability all built in. You don't have to be thinking about it. And finally, with automation, you lower the cost. So if you actually automate processes that used to be manual, that frees up your time to work on other business-critical work. And also, when you automate stuff, you've built runbooks, you've tested them. Every time you run them, they're going to run the same way. So you get that reliability built in. You don't have the manual tasks happening over and over, which increase the ability, the possibility that there might be some error, human error, coming into it. So, when we think about these things, we talk about one automation. We talk about one automation system that would handle all this. And so one of the things that we've been doing is we've been working towards this with Azure Automation. And some of the areas that we're going to show you today, we have like a user interface. We have this new web portal. You're going to eventually get, because we're able to move to the new Azure portal, the new Azure framework, we're going to be able to give you RBAC, role-based access control, where you're going to be able to set controls on runbooks and accounts and other assets within the system. And eventually, we're also going to work on source control and versioning for your runbooks and your assets within the system. Within the authoring space, we're going to give you graphical authoring, which we're going to talk about today. We have PowerShell authoring as well. We're going to keep innovating in those spaces to make them more and more efficient for you to create runbooks. We have a gallery where you can go and get pre-made solutions to integrate with various systems, and you get examples on how to create runbooks. And we also have PowerShell desired state configuration, where instead of doing imperative type programming to do certain work like configuring VMs, you can use a very declarative approach using these PowerShell DSC files that we're going to end up being a pull server. Azure Automation will be a pull server for those files, and you can store them and manage them right within Azure Automation. So you're getting into multiple ways of actually automating your systems. Azure Automation has a very highly available runbook engine. It's based on the PowerShell workflow. It allows you to checkpoint your runbooks so that if there's a failure somewhere and the runbook has to stop, it can then restart, but it doesn't have to go restart from the beginning. It can restart from some other place within the runbook. So we have that checkpointing ability. We have the hybrid runbook worker, which is going to allow you to run your workloads on-premise if you want to, rather than up in the Azure cloud. And also, our service has a REST-based interface and also PowerShell module, so you can actually automate against, and you can manage Azure Automation itself from your tools. You can import runbooks, you can start jobs, all of that stuff through our API. And finally, we have the integration, which is one of the, just keep emphasizing this. It's so easy to integrate with other systems using PowerShell modules and the integration capabilities there. And also, we're building tools right now for those of you using Orchestrator to be able to port your Orchestrator runbooks into Azure Automation graphical runbooks. So I'll very quickly go through a few scenarios here. We've all been familiar with scenarios that we've had historically. You have monitoring and remediation type scenarios. You've been monitoring your systems, you see some alert, you want to kick off some automation, do some remediation, put a ticket in the ticketing system. You have change control and provisioning. Again, automation fits into these scenarios. Patching and updating, backup, all of this. You put them on a schedule, you do your patches, backups. Automation is right there. But one of the things that's happening is that as we move to a cloud-based world now, private cloud, public cloud, the number of automation scenarios is increasing. Okay, and so our tools have to improve along with that. And so that's where, the whole integration capabilities of Azure Automation and using PowerShell Workflow it fits right in very nicely with the increased demand of moving to cloud-based IT. And at this, I'll hand it over to Beth.
Great. Thanks, Chris, for that introduction to automation. So I'm going to talk now a little bit about the user experience, the new user experience for automation. But before I do that, how many of you are using Azure Automation? Awesome. So almost everybody. How many of you have used System Center Orchestrator? Cool. Also, almost everybody. Great. So we're going to show you a bunch of cool new things. So just to level set before we go into the new features, what did automation look like in the existing portal? So you were able to author your runbooks in a PowerShell editor online. You can, of course, test and publish these runbooks and then put them on schedules, monitor and troubleshoot, all in the same portal. And then we had a runbook gallery, which provided samples so you can get started really quickly. The core resources in automation are runbooks, which are PowerShell workflows, jobs, which are instances of runbooks, and then you have all the things that the runbooks can use. So you have modules and the commandlets that make up the core pieces, the building blocks for your runbooks, and then you have schedules so you can start those runbooks automatically. And then we have secure automation assets. So if you need to use certificates, variables, credentials, you can import them all into your automation space and store them together, and then use them in your runbooks as you need them. So here is the core concepts as they existed a week ago, and then with the new features. So previously, we just had textual PowerShell workflow runbooks. You now have the ability to author your runbooks graphically. DSC configurations, right now they're available through the command line, but we are going to be bringing back the management to the portal. To trigger your runbooks, we now have webhooks, as Chris mentioned before. So that's just with a simple HTTP post. You can start your runbook from any app. And then the ability to run your runbooks on not only just on our highly available Azure Automation service, you can also set your own workers up, and we'll show you how to do this today. So automation in the preview portal, you have all of that good stuff, all of your runbook management, asset management, management of your jobs. And we're going to be bringing more features in over time, so we're constantly iterating because this is in the cloud. So you'll see new stuff showing up every day. So with that, I'm going to hop in and give you a quick tour of our portal. Great. So I'm in the new preview portal right now. And if you've never used automation, probably the first place you're going to want to start out is in the marketplace. Oh. Okay, perfect. Got it. Sorry about that. So I'm now in, let me just go home and start again. So I'm in the new preview portal, and I'm going to go to the marketplace. And then automation shows up under developer services here. And we have a couple of different samples, and we'll be expanding this as time goes on. So you can come in here and create just a simple runbook, or you can start off with like a different sample here. So if I wanted to start off, I'm new, I can come in and create a tutorial runbook in here. So I actually have a bunch of content in my account already. So once you have content in your accounts, I can browse and then go to automation accounts in here. So I'll now see a list of all of my automation accounts here. I can see what resource group they're in, the location, the subscription. So if I click on my Ignite demo here, this is going to take me to my automation account dashboard. So at the very top here, we show some core information about this automation account, what resource group it's in, so what other resources in Azure is it grouped with, the location, subscription name, what status, who modified it, and when it was modified. I also have all of my core resources here, so you can quickly get to your runbooks, manage your assets, use your hybrid workers, and see jobs. One thing that's changed here, if you were using the current portal, you'd set a pricing tier across all of your accounts. Now you can set that on an account-by-account basis, and we give you 500 minutes for free. So that's a ton, so you can start using automation right away for no money at all. If I come into assets here, I can see I can do all of my asset management in here. So if I wanted to come in, I can import. I have a list of my modules, and automation provides some out of the box for you. But if I create my own modules or have other modules that I want to use, I can simply import them in here using this add module. All of the other assets work the same way here. So if I wanted to create certificates, connections, or if I wanted to go in and create a variable that I use across the account, I can just come in and create my variable here. We have a number of different types and some different helpers in here. So if I wanted to create a date time, we give you a date time picker. A string, you can use an encrypted string or not encrypted. So I can come in and create my variables in here, and then I can use these in our runbooks, and Chris will show you how you can do that in a couple of minutes. If I go back to my automation account here, I can see a list of all of the runbooks that I have in my account. So you can see on the left-hand side, I have two different types of runbooks. I have my textual runbooks, and I have my graphical runbooks. And I can see the authoring status and the last time it was modified. So if I come in here, I can see some of the details about this particular runbook, the account that it was created in. Is it published or not? Is it a PowerShell runbook or is it a graphical runbook? And then I can see I can actually come in and create add schedules here, and I can come in and add webhooks in here. I can also see all of the jobs that ran and drill in and see more details about that job. So if I had an exception or something went wrong, I can drill in and quickly start debugging in here. I can also go in and edit the runbooks, which will open up the authoring experience. And if I move back to my runbooks list, I can come in here, and I can also create runbooks here. So I can say, that's runbook. And do a quick create here. So what this is going to do is just create a blank template in your space here. Or I could have used that import runbook, and if I have any PowerShell scripts that I want to import in and put in the central library, I can just import them in and begin using them right away. So this is going to bring me to the authoring experience, and I'll leave Chris to talk about this.
Thank you, Beth. So Beth just showed you the new UX that we now have our automation in. So you're going to be able to see both. If you go to Azure right now and you're using automation, you'll be able to see the classic view and the new portal view as well. You'll want to get used to using the new portal view because all of our new features are actually going into the new portal view because that framework allows us to do the things that we want to do. So what I'd like to do now is walk you through the authoring we have. First, I'll walk you through some of the textual authoring, and then I'll walk you through graphical authoring. On the textual authoring piece, so we basically give you two ways to author runbooks within Azure Automation. You can do a pure PowerShell authoring type experience if you're familiar with PowerShell. We give you a textual editor. It has a very big workspace now for you to work on. If you used the classic view that we've had out for about a year or so, you notice that the window's kind of small. This one's very big now. And we also integrate it with a library of your commandlets and runbooks and assets, so you can very easily find them and then insert them into the runbook. This editor, which I'll demo here in a minute, gives you color coding. It gives you line numbering, and it also gives you the ability to search throughout your runbook. And also, there's an integrated testing experience. If you look at the library, we surface all of the commandlets that you've imported modules into your system. You know, the whole point here is the PowerShell modules allow you to integrate into the systems that are important to you that you need to automate against. You've imported these modules in. Some of them we give you for free, like the Azure modules and most of the core PowerShell modules. So you want them to be at your fingertips when you're authoring. Our library gives you those at your fingertips. Also, you know, when you're creating your automations, you tend to want to modularize things. So you'll take tasks, and you'll put some tasks together for one particular task area, and you'll make that into a runbook. And then you can build up runbooks that are filled with other runbooks plus commandlets. So you sort of build this modular framework that allows you to reuse your code. And so that's why we surface runbooks, so you can use them within other runbooks. And finally, we surface all the assets, which Beth just showed you. So you can make your credentials, and you might use a credential across many different runbooks, but we allow you to store that in one place and then pull it in very easily into your runbooks. Variables, connections, certificates also as well you can pull in. And then we have a new testing experience, which is a separate pane now from the authoring experience. In this case, one of the improvements we have is that if you have input parameters to your runbook while you're testing, the previous experience brought up a wizard, and you'd type in your parameters, and then you'd click OK. A test would run, and then the next time you run the test, you have to do it all over again. So right now, the input parameter part is persistent. So if you're running multiple tests, you don't have to keep inputting your input values. You can just modify them and then run another test. So let me give you a little demo here. There we go. Okay, that looks right. Yep. So the demo I'm going to show you today, just real quick, walkthrough of one of our PowerShell runbooks. And this is actually a runbook that I'm going to use in the demo later on when we talk about webhooks and doing work on a hybrid worker. In this case, it's called Demo OpenStack. And one of the things I want to focus on here is not only will I show you the editor, but I also want to emphasize the integration capabilities. This particular runbook was written just within the last week or two by one of our other PMs, Alex, and it actually works against OpenStack. So OpenStack itself does not have a PowerShell module to work against it. But it does have a REST API. So he was able to create a PowerShell module that works against OpenStack, and then I was able to import it into my account here. And so now I have all of these various commandlets available to me to work against OpenStack. So this is just one example of the integration capabilities where you can very quickly start integrating against systems that are important to you. And by the way, if we on our team ever make these sorts of modules, we always put them on CodePlex so they're available to you to use as well. So in this case, I just want to point out that one, you had that. In this case, the runbook is all written. I can show you how. So in this case, he's using this commandlet called getStackToken. And the way you would do that here is and you go over here to your commandlets and right-click. Right now, we have a right-click and add to canvas. Eventually, we'll have a drag-and-drop experience, especially for graphical. In this case, you see that it brought in the core format for calling that commandlet. It brought in the commandlet name, and it brought in all of the properties that are the parameters that could possibly be used in that commandlet, and it tells you whether they're required or optional with standard PowerShell syntax. So that's the commandlet story. And then also, if you go down, now let me just show you the runbooks really quickly here. Right now, this is showing me all the runbooks in the system. Right now, they're organized by all. So you're going to see all of your runbooks. Very shortly, though, once we implement tagging in this portal, which is one of the things that this portal gives us is an integrated tagging experience, you'll be able to put one or more tags on your runbooks to help you organize them. And in that case, your runbooks will show up in this library here organized by tag. So you can very easily say, oh, this is for networking, or this is for provisioning, or whatever, and you'll be able to find the runbooks that you need very quickly to do that. Another thing we're going to put in soon is a search experience here. So you won't have to search through, you won't have to manually go through this. You'll be able to search, and it will bring up just the commandlets and runbooks and assets that match your search query. So here's the assets again. Let's go down to the credentials piece. Notice up here at the top, don't you just love looking at code? We're going to show you how to do that. So here we had this OpenStack admin credential. And again, I right-click, and I'll just add to canvas. And what it does is it pulls in our own activity, this get automation PS credential, which then gets that asset from your asset store in your account and pulls the value into this runbook. So this is how you use your assets within a runbook. It's very, very easy to do. Let me close out of this. Okay, back to the PowerPoint. So the next thing I'd like to run through is our graphical authoring experience, and I'm going to give you a demo of this as well. And so any of you who have dropped by our booth over the last several days will have been seeing demos of this, this experience. We're really pleased with what we've been able to produce here. You know, we are the folks who some of the engineers on our team are the folks who created Orchestrator, and that some of those same engineers are also working on creating this graphical experience here. So we're like taking the best of System Center Orchestrator, the best of PowerShell, merging them together, and even adding more innovation to make it a much better authoring experience. So you know, you can author these runbooks in a visual drag and drop type experience. Right now it's right click and add, but we're also working on drag and drop. That's going to come soon. One of the core aspects of graphical is that you can reuse components that have been created already. So if you have folks who are not PowerShell savvy, or if you need to create runbooks that you need to be able to show to management that actually shows the process IT flow, you can use the graphical experience here, and you can just reuse encapsulated pieces and drag and drop them together. And actually, some of the constructs you can do in graphical are much easier than you could actually do in a textual type authoring experience. So again, we're sharing the library that we have with the PowerShell authoring. We share in graphical as well. So you have access to all of your various resources that you would want to use within a runbook. We give you one other category here down at the bottom called Runbook Control, where we're giving you a couple of special activities. One is called Junction. For those of you familiar with Orchestrator, you know that a junction activity is one that if you have a bunch of branches working in parallel and you merge them into a junction, the junction will force them all to finish together. And then once they've all finished, you can continue. And also we give you another activity called the Workflow Script. And this allows you within graphical to also put in any custom workflow script that you want. It will be inserted in line. So this is like a customizable extension to graphical. You could put PowerShell in here as well. Again, we have the canvas. The canvas, as I'll show you here in a bit, is going to allow you to move things around, connect activities up, configure them. We have the ability to configure input parameters very easily. And you can select from, this is actually to create input. This is creating runbook input parameters. And you can create runbook input parameters of the various types of string, integer, Boolean, date, time, and object. You can set whether they're mandatory or not. And you can set default values on them. All very standard PowerShell type expectations, but in a graphical type setting. And then you can configure your activities. You select an activity. You get standard configurations. You can set a label to any name you want within the system so that it looks nice to you. We tell you what the core commandlet was that begin with. Then you can start configuring parameters. You can select, if a commandlet has parameter sets, you can select the parameter set graphically. Once you select the parameter set, you can go in then and configure parameters. We tell you which ones are mandatory, which ones are optional. You can hover on the little info balloons and see what type it is and get other information about it. And then one of the really important things here is the different data sources we give you to actually set the values for the activity inputs. And right now, we want to give you access to every possible source that is within our system that you would be interested in. And what you can see up here is you can set a constant value, which you would go in and type in by hand. You can set what we call activity output, which is, for those of you familiar with Orchestrator, know that that's what they call the data bus, where you can refer to the input to this activity. You refer to the output from one of the other activities upstream from this particular activity. And that is a very, very commonly used input. And it's one of the things that makes graphical authoring very powerful is the use of the data bus. In this case, you see you have the data bus, and we have it as a tree. And in this case, for the current release, you can select the activities, and then if you want a field from within one of the objects, then you have to type it in. But eventually that tree is going to also include not only objects that were output by activities, but then fields within those objects. And if there was an object, you might have an object within an object. So we're going to, again, give you the graphical ability to select exactly which data piece you want as input to this next activity. And in my demo, you'll see how that actually works. And finally, again, we have the ability to use a PowerShell expression here to create input for an activity parameter. And you're going to see sprinkled throughout our graphical experience not only the ability to create and configure runbooks totally graphically if you want to, but we also give you the ability to put in some pieces of pure PowerShell if you want to. And that totally extends the capability here in ways that we have not thought about, but you want. And so you can extend it that way if you want to. And right now the editor, I'll say that right now the editor are text boxes. They're eventually going to be exactly like the textual editor, where they're total color coding and IntelliSense and all of that. And plus we're going to give helpers for these inserts where you can go and we help you build expressions to create these PowerShell expressions. We also give you the ability to put in additional parameters that are not standard parameters for a commandlet or an activity, and these would be some of the PowerShell common parameters, PowerShell workflow common parameters. You can also extend that way. One of the really important ones is link configuration. So when you configure your activities together with links, we allow you to configure those links. We're giving you a couple of types of links here. We're giving you a pipeline link, which those of you familiar with PowerShell is exactly the same as the PowerShell pipeline, where if the previous activity has 5 pieces of output objects, the next activity is going to run 5 times. And it's going to have access to the individual objects from that previous activity. However, if there's no output from the previous activity, the next one will not run. So that's where the sequence link comes in. The sequence link guarantees, and that's the little skinny one up there, the sequence link guarantees that the next activity will run exactly once. The only caveat is that when you reference the data from the previous activity, now you have to reference it as an array of objects rather than the individual objects. So this is just part of your programming model, and it gives you flexibility to make things work the way that you want to. And then you can also set conditions on links, and I'm going to show you how to do that in my demo here. And then finally, we give you the workflow script activity, which I talked about before, which allows you to insert general PowerShell workflow script into the graphical runbook at any space you want. And in this example here I'm showing you, you could actually use it to insert an inline script, to run an inline script. And for say you wanted to run a certain PowerShell object and you wanted to use a method on it, then you'd need to run that within an inline script here. And finally, we have a test experience again, which is the same as our textual test experience. So let me go on to a demo. So I'm actually going to build this runbook. I've already built it before. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start this right now. I'm going to show you here. There's my virtual machines. You can see that they're stopped. So I'm going to start this one up, and it's going to start a job. This is asking me if I want to run out on Azure or hybrid worker. We're going to talk about hybrid workers later. I'll say OK. And this is going to open up a job, and it's going to start running. So I'm going to close that out since we got that going. And then what I'm going to come back here and do is I'm going to build that runbook again here graphically. Some of you who have been by our booth have probably seen this built before. But what I want to do is I want to be able to start all of my stopped Azure VMs in this demo. So I need to do 3 things. I need to authenticate with Azure. I need to get my VMs in my subscription. I need to find the ones that are stopped, and I need to start them. And the reason I picked this demo is because I can actually do it in about 7 minutes, so it makes sense for an audience like this, where our time is of essence. So the first thing I do is go into my assets over here, and I have a credential called my Azure credential. I'm going to add that into the canvas here, and I'm going to give this a friendly name called get get Azure credential. Next thing I need to do, now that I have that credential, is I need to authenticate with Azure. And I'm going to do that using the first commandlet that pops up here in the Azure Service Manager module, and that's add Azure account. And then I'm going to hook those together with a pipeline link. And then I'm going to configure add Azure account. It's going to need that credential. So I'm going to select the user parameter set here, and I'm going to go in and configure the credential. And I'm going to use the output of the get Azure credential activity. And now we have our authentication all set up. We've got the credential, and now we're connecting with Azure. So now that I'm connected with Azure, next thing we want to do is we want to get Azure VMs. There we are. Add that to the canvas. I'm going to hook those together. In this case, I'm going to select a sequence link. I think add Azure account does have output, but it's not anything useful to me, so I'm just going to guarantee that get Azure VM runs. Get Azure VM doesn't need to be configured. It will automatically just go ahead and get all the VMs in your subscription without configuration as long as you're authenticated. So the final thing we need to do is we need to then start the stopped VMs. So let me go down and get my start. I will be so glad when we have search. There we are. Add that to Canvas. And I'm going to connect those with the pipeline link because for every VM that get Azure VM gets, I'm going to want to run start Azure VM to get that. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and I'm going to configure this link because on this link condition, we want to get only the VMs that have stopped. We don't want to restart the started ones. So I'm going to, at this point, I'll put in an expression here.
So Chris, that PowerShell expression in there, that can be any expression that evaluates to true-false, right?
That's right.
Cool, thanks.
Right, so on the link condition, it needs to be able to evaluate to true or false. And we'll make one here that hopefully evaluates to true or false. Okay, so there we've written an expression here. So the things you see here are this one entity called activity output. So this is an array that contains all of the output objects from activities, the previous activities within the runbook. And this is a textual way for you to refer actually to the output, basically to the data bus. This is how you can textually refer to the data bus within a graphical runbook. And in this case, we're getting the output from the get Azure VM commandlet, and we're looking at the power state field, and we're saying, okay, tell me when that is equal to stopped. And if it's equal to stopped, then those are the VMs that will be passed to start Azure VM. And again, I want to say that for these expressions here right now, you have to type this in, but we're going to make expression builders eventually, so you can just go in and click, 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 and build an expression like this without having to know that, what is the name of that again? Is it activity output or whatever? So again, we're going to continue to innovate here and make this easier and easier. And finally, I need to configure this, start Azure VM, and I'm going to choose a parameter set. We're going to start the VMs by their name, and I'm going to configure the name here. Again, I'm going to use the activity output of the get Azure VM, and the field path I want to use is, so that's going to give me the name of the VM here. So I got the output object from get Azure VM, the instance name field. And then for the service name, which is the other mandatory parameter, I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm going to use, and again, in this particular blade right here, we're also going to allow you to pick these eventually, click, 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 without having to type this stuff in. So there we go. This runbook is ready to go. So let me, I'll just save this. And let me go back to that one that I already started, which was this one. And let's go ahead and look at the job. The job completed. Let's look at the output. It succeeded on starting two VMs. Let's go look here at my virtual machines. Let's do an F5. Boom, boom. Okay, that's nice. Let me just get my virtual machines in. There we are. Running. Yes. Okay. So the last piece I want to talk about here is just, you're looking at graphical, you're looking at textual, you go, which one should I use? And basically, they're both complementary. They both have distinct programming models. In the graphical case, you're looking at more of a visual type experience where you can drag and drop, you can see things. One of our fellow PMs called it sort of super IntelliSense. You can really see everything you need. You could just kind of pull it in, link it together. It's that kind of experience. One of the things that's nice about graphical is if you want to focus on how the data flows through your workflow, if you want to focus on which systems are being touched, it's very easy to see that in a visual workflow. It's very hard to see that in a PowerShell workflow script. You have to parse through it and see what's going on. In a visual, you can see it instantly. And so it's very easy also to document your processes internally if you have these graphical type workflows that you can then print out, and so here's how we're doing this, and you can show it to somebody else. It's a higher level language, so in general it should increase productivity because you've already have the building blocks in place. In our case, you can use PowerShell if you want to, and it's very familiar to System Center Orchestrator users. And the designer is in the cloud, so you can go to any browser, log into Azure, and you can use the designer. And textual is also a distinct programming model. It's PowerShell workflow script authoring. That those of you who do PowerShell are very familiar with that. It's a lower level language, so it's very versatile. You can do all kinds of loops and ifs and do all kinds of comparisons and stuff. And a real powerful thing is you can use your existing PowerShell workflow scripts and just import them into Azure Automation and get them working. So at this point, I'll hand it over to Beth, and we'll start our larger scale demo.
Sure. So now we want to talk about how you can extend automation to orchestrate processes across different systems. So the way that you extend automation is through an integration module. And automation it's PowerShell workflow. So you extend automation just like you do in PowerShell. You can author modules. So whether you like to write your modules in C# or in PowerShell, you can do either or. And you can really create a PowerShell module with anything with a REST API, so that really there's a ton of scenarios out there. So that's if you want to write your own module. There's also, between Microsoft and third party, and there's a ton of PowerShell modules that exist to integrate against a number of different systems. So if you go to PowerShell Gallery or Script Center, you'll see a ton of different examples that you can get started with right away. So the one thing that I want to call out here is that when you write your modules for Azure Automation, it's pretty much the same as you would in the ISC, except you can include one additional file called the connection file, and it's just a JSON object which specifies, it just makes it easier for you to hook into and integrate with other systems. So that's just something to be aware of that you can take advantage of when you author your own modules. Another thing that you should be aware of, when you import modules into Azure Automation, you want to make sure everything is contained in that one folder. And this is because everything is run on our highly available hosts. So you get a fresh host every time that job starts up, so you don't want to be relying on any installs that you might do on your local machine. So just things to be aware of. So there are tons of different scenarios where you might want to use integration modules. Of course, what we showed before with Azure, that uses a module. You can manage your Linux machines, AWS, any of your source controls, so Visual Studio Online, GitHub, SharePoint Online. You can write modules for all of these things, and then also if you want to call across the automation products, so if you want to call across Orchestrator and Service Management Automation, you can call our services from each other. So there's tons more scenarios, but we'll walk through right now. sort of an Uber scenario. So this scenario is going to be broken apart into a couple of different demos. And what Chris and I have done, so sort of the overall scenario, is we have a website. And this website's going to serve as a self-service portal. We're hosting this website on Azure. And we're taking advantage of a couple of different things here. One, we have all of our code checked into source control. So we're going to use automation to monitor that source control. And when there's any commits, we're going to push the website. We're going to send it up to a test environment. The other thing that we're taking advantage of here is the new Azure Resource Manager. So we're going to use an ARM template to do that deployment. So we're using automation to orchestrate it, but the ARM template to actually describe what that deployment looks like. And then once we have our website up on Azure, it's a self-service portal, so we don't want to have any manual intervention. So we're going to take advantage of our new webhooks feature. So when the users come in and click a button to provision their VMs that they want, we're going to have a webhook that's in our website, and that's going to trigger a runbook. So now to show our hybrid functionality, sort of the last piece of this scenario, we have a hybrid runbook worker set up in the Redmond data center. And we are going to spin up a VM within the data center. So now, one thing that I want to point out here is we're sort of using general terms. We're going to integrate with GitHub in this example. We're going to use OpenStack. But it doesn't really matter, as long as you can write a module to integrate with the service. So if you want to use Visual Studio, or if you wanted to use VMM or Hyper-V or VMware, you can use any of that with automation. As long as you can write a PowerShell module, you can automate against it. So I'm going to start off and show the first part of this scenario. So this is step one. We have our source control, the resource manager template, and then the site content. And we just made a change to the website this morning. So what we did, we checked in our changes, and we want Azure Automation. So I have a runbook that actually monitors my GitHub repository for any changes. And then when it finds a change has been committed in there, it's going to push my code up onto my website. So it's actually going to use that resource manager template and do the deployment to the website. So then you can use automation. So once that deployment happens, for any pre or post-processing tasks you want to do on there. And then you might want to run some tests and then push that test site to production. So I'm going to show you how I've done this. If I come into my demo account and go into my runbooks list in here, I have a runbook called Monitor GitHub Trigger. And I'm just going to start it right now because it takes a little bit of time to actually do the deployment of the website. And I can see now that a job's opened up, so I know it's starting in here. So I'm just going to close this out now and look at what the runbook's actually doing. So I used a text-based runbook for this, but you could have just as easily made a graphical runbook to do this. I set all of my parameters at top. I'm pulling a token, so I've stored this in our asset store as a secure encrypted string, so nobody can see my token. And then I'm using a module that we put together. We called it GitHub. So again, we took advantage of the REST API and wrapped some of those different functions as cmdlets. So I can copy a GitHub repository, get a GitHub commit. Just really any general thing. We just have invoke GitHub REST method. So for anything that we've missed there, you can just invoke the REST method to call that. So once I get my GitHub commit, this is going to have all the response content. And I want to run this runbook on a schedule. I don't want this to continually be running on a loop. So actually, if I just slide back here, you see that I have 4 schedules running. So these are actually set up to run every 15 minutes. So what I'm doing in here is I'm getting an automation variable where I store the hash for each of the commits. So that's going to be a unique value for each of the commits. So I can do a comparison. Every single time I do this pull, I can say, hey, is there a new commit or is there not a new commit? Another way you might want to think about doing this, if you don't have like a hash like that to use, you can use like a date time and store that in our asset store. So if I find that there's a new commit, I just pull my credentials and I'm authenticating to Azure. And I like to keep all of my automation processes separate. So this runbook, all it's doing is monitoring GitHub. The next runbook that I'm going to call, and this is going to be a totally separate process, so if this might run quite a bit more frequently than 15 minutes, I would call asynchronously another runbook that's going to do all of the management. So whatever I want to do based off of this task, that second runbook's going to do that. So here I'm just setting some of the parameters so that I can call this asynchronously, and then I start the runbook. And then I guess the very last thing that's important here is I'm just updating the last hash value so I can check it and it's correct the next time around. Oops. So just to point out again, I said that I have the 4 schedules, so you can see I'm running on every hour on the 15, every hour on the 45, every hour on the hour. So I can set as many schedules as I want against one single runbook. So if I hop into this account right here, this is where my other runbook lives here. So I have a generic runbook that just deploys any ARM template. So this doesn't necessarily need to be a website. So if I come in here and look at what it's doing, you'll see all of the many parameters that I passed in here. I set my error action preference to stop just because I want to know some of these things just error out. They don't actually throw an exception, so I want to see that exception there. I'm pulling some of the credentials that I'm storing in our asset store, copying the repository onto my local runbook host. So because I'm copying files onto the host, if something bad happens and we, for some reason, get disconnected, I'm checkpointing before that just to make sure that I'll copy that file again so it's there for the next processes. The next thing I do is just make sure that I have my resource group that I'm going to do the deployment in available. I test the template, which isn't completely necessary. And then I go through and do the new deployment. And then the very last thing that I do here is I just send myself an email. But you can see that I can put in some other steps. So if you have specific scenarios that you want to cover, you can just include them in this runbook here. So I also want to point out, in my GitHub repository, I have my deployment template here. So I can come in here and take a look at what that looks like here. So this describes what my website looks like, and it also hooks it up to the source control. So it's going to be deploying the code from this repository here. I'm just going to come back in and let's see what's going on here. So I'm going to go to jobs and see, okay, at 9:36, it looks like this job completed. I can go to the output. I can see I have 14 input parameters. I see all of the output here. Looks like we're still running here. So if I go to, so I can see that the deployment succeeded. I can see all the parameters that I passed in. So I can see the repository, what I've called my site here, what plan it's under, and site location there. So I'm just going to close out of that. And let's see if it shows up now. It might need another couple of seconds. So if I go under my web apps here, perfect. I see my, my new website that I've just deployed here. And if I, oh, there it goes. It pops up the notifications. It just shows that the deployment succeeded. And if I scroll down here, I can actually see that, in fact, in the deployment, I've hooked up my source code, so I see that it's hooked up to my GitHub repository there. And if I browse here, we see that we have our website up and ready to run. People can create VMs on it. So that shows the first part of this scenario. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk to you guys about hybrid runbook workers. What? So first of all, what is hybrid all about? So you can define a hybrid runbook worker. So any server in your data center, you can define that as a hybrid runbook worker here. And this allows you to run your automation jobs in your data center. So you can do all of your authoring and have one central repository for all of your runbooks and all of your assets to manage your processes, not only just in the cloud and across clouds, but in your data center as well. So this makes it really easy to do the management. We handle most of those deployments, so you don't need to manage, you don't need to deploy WAP and manage that and all of your runbook servers there. And then how do you use hybrid? So there's two different ways. You can start the hybrid runbook worker. Oh. Sorry, this is the slide that I'm talking to. So you can use the UX to start the hybrid runbook worker, and you can also start it from the command line. So we have start Azure Automation Runbook, which I had showed earlier. And we have an additional parameter that you can use with it there. And you can use a run on, so you can specify the group name. So when you create your hybrid runbook workers, you can specify, you can have multiple servers, and we actually recommend that you install multiple servers for your workers to make sure that it's highly available. So you not only have its highly available engine on premises, you have your highly available engine in the cloud. And this just gives a picture. So this top portion of the picture, last week we were just in the public cloud. This week you can now go into your private clouds, and you can also manage any other resources, so Hyper-V, VMware, any heterogeneous environments that are running in your data center. You can also do that management there. So there are two quick and easy steps to register your hybrid runbook workers. So first, you're going to want to use the new Operations Management Suite. You're going to want to create a workspace there and install the Microsoft Management Agent onto the worker that you're going to use. And then you're going to also want to deploy the intelligence pack. And then to configure your on-premises machine, you're just going to use the add hybrid runbook worker commandlet. And I can show you just how quick and easy this is to do. So hopefully do this quickly here. Great. So I just want to show in my Ignite demo account, I have two hybrid runbook workers here. I have my Yale Cooper hybrid and my laptop as my hybrid. And let me just get onto my hybrid worker here. So what I've done here, I've actually already downloaded the Microsoft Management Agent. And the way that you can tell that here is if I go to the control panel in Systems and Security, I can see I have my Microsoft Monitoring Agent here. And you're going to be able to see when I go into my Ops Insights, I actually have it monitoring here, so you can see this green check that it's good to go here. If I pop into my browser, I'm now in OMS. And I've already done this setup here, but there are a couple of different things that you need to do. One, you need to create a workspace. You're going to want to hook it up to your Azure account to connect there. I've also gone to the Solutions Gallery, and I've selected my automation pack here, and I've done that deployment. So if I come back here, I can see I am actually hooked up to my automation account here. You can select which account you want to show here, and this will hook back to the Azure portal. So once I've done that, I want to go under Settings and go under my connected sources here, and I can see I have 3 servers connected, and you can download the agent to run it here. So I've done that already, so I'm just going to sort of skip ahead. And the first thing that you're going to want to do is import the module here. So that's now imported, so I should be able to run this commandlet here. So the first parameter that you're going to need here is the endpoint. So I'm just going to hop back really quickly and go under here and go to Keys. So these keys are used to configure both hybrid and your DSC. So this is where you're going to get your tokens that you're needed here. So I'm just going to copy the primary access key here. Oops, sorry, this is the endpoint. I'll copy the URL, which is the endpoint first. Paste that in there. The token is my key. Copy that. And then the name, so I'm just going to call it Beth Group here, and hit go. So this is going to run, and this should install my hybrid agent here. Oops. Perfect, so it looks like that worked there. And then I hop back over here, and you see just how quick that was. I now have my new worker, and I can start runbooks just right away in a couple of seconds there. So I'm just going to come in here, and if I go to start, you're going to see I can select hybrid runbook worker, and now I can see my new Beth group that I just set up right now. So I'm going to hand it over to Chris to continue the demo now.
And I can add that to prepare for this, I made a hybrid runbook worker myself, and I did it like one morning before I went to work in about a half hour. So it's actually very easy to create a hybrid runbook worker and get it working for yourself. So what I'd like to talk about now is another feature that we're introducing, and this is a reminder to me to go kick off the demo. And here's that site that Beth spun up. So again, Beth spun this up from an ARM template that was in a source repository. We created a website in Azure. We put this web page here. This web page has a button that says Create VM. That Create VM is backed by a webhook, which I'm going to talk about now. It's going to post to a runbook that's going to get started, and that runbook is going to create an OpenStack VM on another machine we have. So this is going to finally complete the scenario we have and showing you the integration capabilities. So I'm going to click this. VM is being created. And at this point, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint while that's going on. Oh, wait, one more thing. I have to prove that.
So that webhook just started a runbook. So by clicking that button, we triggered a runbook, and every single time you click that, it's just going to kick off another runbook.
Yeah, here we are on the OpenStack portal, and this is showing all the different instances of VMs. And right now, there's only one called demo here. Oh, I'm on Beth's. Thank you. It's asking me to log in again. There we are. Yeah, so we have one VM going, and later on you'll see we're going to have two VMs here. So now I can go back. Sorry about that. Thank you, Beth. I'll skip past this one. So webhooks, I'm going to kind of go quickly through this because we're very short on time here, but webhooks are a really cool feature that we've introduced that allow you to start a runbook from an external system. You know, you have different ways that you can start runbooks. You can go into the portal, you can push the button and say start runbook. Another way is you can actually use a schedule, which is a very common way that runbooks are started in our system. You have runbooks that you want to do something on a certain schedule. You want to get logs from one system, put them somewhere else. You want to do something to your database, et cetera, and you can set those on a schedule and you can kick off a runbook. Another way, which we're introducing today, is you can use a webhook. And again, a webhook is a URL that you'll create, and I'll show you how to do that here, that contains the information you need to start a runbook, and it also contains the security token for you to actually call into our service and start that runbook without any other authentication. You can use a monitor technique, which is what Beth showed you here when she was monitoring source control. And once some certain event happened in source control, she then kicked off another runbook from within her monitor runbook. Another way is you can just use PowerShell, and you can go against our API. We have an API, and we have a PowerShell module. You can work against Azure Automation, and you can start runbooks and stop runbooks and get jobs and all those things from within PowerShell in general. And you can also work against, using any type of code you want, you can work against our API. What are automation webhooks? So again, a webhook is a URL. You're going to use it in a post setting, so any application that can do an HTTP post can set a webhook. There are many applications out here that have built-in capability for you to put a webhook in and then connect it to given events within those systems. Visual Studio Online has this. GitHub has this. Other applications allow you to do this so that you can then get called using your webhook when an event happens in that system. One of the things that happens when you create a runbook is you can set the parameters that you want to pass into the runbook. And also what will come out of a webhook is, let me go one more. What will come out of a webhook is some parameters. So when that webhook actually calls your runbook, not only will you get the runbook parameters that you set when you created the webhook, but there's also another set of parameters that are passed in a very special parameter called the webhook data parameter, and that's going to give you the name of the webhook. It's going to give you all the request headers that were in your initial request, and it's also going to give you a request body of the post object. So you can pass other additional information into the runbook if you want, and then within that runbook, if you do some special coding, you can grab all that information and do something with it. So this is like extra information above and beyond the parameters, the normal parameters for the runbook. Let me go back real quickly here to talk about security. Yeah, so you have to treat a webhook URL like a password, because anyone who has that URL can start your runbook. So when I show you a demo here of creating a webhook, you're going to see that you're only going to see that webhook once with our UX. You have to take it and store it somewhere. After that, you'll never see it again in our UX. So if you lose it, you'll have to delete that webhook and make another one. But this is part of the security protocol here. And one of the things you can do is you can set webhooks to expire at a certain time if you want to. And also you can go into the UX and you can disable or enable webhooks. And also you can do special work within your runbook if you want to be extra secure, that when it gets called by a webhook, you could do some work and call back to that system that called you just to make sure it's legit. So let me give a little demo here. Go to Hello World, and I would just go up here at the top and click Webhook. Go to Create Webhook. You can see on this blade that opened up here, now I can give the name. Whether it's enabled or not, I can set the expiration date. By default, it's a year out. This is the URL that you're going to want to copy. All right, this is the one you're only going to see once. I click Create here. It turns out that this particular runbook has a parameter. Okay, and there you go, that webhook has been created. I have stored that URL. When I use it against the system, it's going to run this runbook and it's going to pass in that one parameter called name that we set to be world. Okay, go back. So finally here, I want to show you the final part of our demo, and let's see what all works. So basically what we did in the demo is Beth was working against source control. When a change happened in source control, she spun up a website. That website was also using an ARM template within Azure. Within that ARM template, it was actually referring back to the source control to pull in the data for the website, the pages. On one of those pages, we had a button, like in an IT request type scenario. That button is for a person to spin up a VM. That VM and that button in this case is going to call a runbook, which is going to run on a hybrid worker to spin up an OpenStack VM. So let's see what happened here. So I'll go back to my machine again. Okay. And the runbook that was called by the webhook was this one, Start Runbook on Premises. And if we go in and look at this, it's just a graphical runbook that is going to use Start Azure Automation Runbook. The parameters here include the name of the other runbook I'm going to start, which is going to make the OpenStack VM. And it also includes this run-on parameter that Beth showed you. This is telling you to start this runbook, but start it on a hybrid runbook worker. Okay, so this one started. We can look at the jobs here. Here's a job from this morning. It completed. Look at the output. What we get from the output of this initial one is just the job that we started. It started this demo OpenStack runbook. We can go back to look now at the demo OpenStack runbook. This one here was the one that was kicked off. This is the one that's actually going to do the work. Let's look at the jobs here. Yay, there was a job it completed this morning. We'll look at the output of that. and it's given us all the output from our commandlet that ran on a hybrid worker, used the OpenStack module that we created, and spun up an OpenStack VM. So let's go back now to our instances here. Do an F5. Yes, we have another VM on that in that system there. So
I'm just going to sort of skip through these because Chris did a really good job of summarizing what our sort of Uber demo was here. So what we showed you today, we have a new portal experience that's located in the new Azure Preview portal. There are going to be a ton of new features that are going to be coming in over the coming months. So you'll see some new stuff showing up there. We showed you graphical authoring today, so you can take advantage of the nice drag and drop functionality and visualize your workflows. You can also still use all of your textual runbooks and sort of use them as you see fit. And then we, of course, have the integrated testing experience and automation. So we showed you some of the new features here. So we showed you graphical authoring, hybrid runbook worker, and webhooks. We also mentioned we have a migration story. So if you have orchestrator runbooks and you want to bring those forward, we're going to make it very easy for you to do that with our migration tools. So your existing investments are going to just easily move forward there. PowerShell DSA, you have automation as a pull service to support large-scale deployments. We're going to help you visualize your configurations and all of your managed nodes in automation. Linux support, we want to offer out a native Linux module and support for DSA. We're also working on building out a gallery experience so you can have solutions that you can deploy and get started really quickly to deploy them into your environment. And then last but not least, role-based access control. That should be showing up shortly so you're able to lock down what runbooks people can edit and what runbooks people can start. And we know that these are some of the top requests that we're seeing here. So if there's one thing that you take away from this session today, it's that automation isn't just to orchestrate and automate your processes in Azure. You can use automation for the orchestration across any public cloud, any service, and also in your data center, so on-premises as well. We're really excited to show you all of our new features. So the graphical authoring, the hybrid, DSC we're showing this afternoon, and webhooks. And so there's a ton of new scenarios that we think that these open up for you. We'd love for you to try out these features. Please give us feedback. It's very important. We're going to be iterating a ton, so let us know what you think. And there's 2 more sessions. There's one tomorrow, our feature sessions, and then there's a DSC session this afternoon. So if you want to see that. So I think we're all done now.
So I think we have thank you. We have a couple of minutes for questions here. One thing I want to ask you is that when you first came in, some of you got forms to fill out. And if you took a chance to fill out that survey, that's really great. If you could either drop, as you go out, just drop them in a pile by the door out there, would be really good, and we'll pick those up and look at those. That really helps us. So I guess now we can open it up for a few questions if folks have some.
Okay, if you guys just want to line up by the microphones, we can do that. Keep it, I think. Yep, go ahead.
Works, actually. There we go. I'm just curious, since all this is in the preview portal, is it supported?
Yeah, so it is in the preview portal. We have our runbook engine has been GA for some time. So all of your jobs are going to run on the same engine. And we're going to try to get out of the preview portal as quickly as possible. So we're going to iterate really quickly. So you should see pretty quickly we'll be out of preview and we'll be general availability.
Okay, so as far as editing these runbooks in the graphical method, I can call support today, and that's not an issue?
Yeah, that's not an issue. You can call support.
Thank you.
Yep.
Pardon?
Okay. Yeah, we'll take people up if people want to chat.
The one we showed?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If I execute a job on a hybrid server, does that count against the minutes that are available in Azure Automation?
Yes,
Okay.
right now it does. And part of the reasoning is that is all of the work that goes in to enable that still has a cost to us. And overall, the cost of Azure Automation is quite cheap. Like 10 minutes is 2 cents. So yeah, on the hybrid workers, it still gets charged that amount.
On the hybrid worker, is that does it need to be internet facing or in a DMZ, and is it pull or push?
It's a port 80. So if you have anything open to the internet, it's a total pull from your system. Everything's a pull from your system into it.
So it could be natted or proxied or whatever. It doesn't have to actually be on the internet then.
Anirudh,
I'm sorry, is the
We have
hybrid
our
worker
dev on
going
it.
out, or is the
Outbound.
it's
port,
all
yeah.
outbound, so nothing needs to. Okay, great. Thanks. But you could
So
run that
just
through a
port 80
proxy
outbound.
server. Okay. And then also the HA scenario, or how does that work with HA running multiple hybrid workers? Are they just all calling in to look and see if the job's been invoked yet? Okay. Thanks.
The first worker that can pick it up will pick it up.
Okay.
So if you have multiple workers in that group, and say two of them go down, if you have more workers that are in that group, they can pick it up. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Thank you.
Does the graphical designer produce a PowerShell, visible PowerShell runbook or textual runbook equivalent?
We have a request for that. Right now it doesn't. The first thing we're going to do is make it exportable as a binary blob that won't be readable. So just so you can move it around accounts, you can share it with people. But then the second thing we're going to end up doing is being able to export it as PowerShell so you can look at it. Yeah. We'll have a one-way, though. It's very difficult to go the other way. So it'll be a one-way move if you want to export as PowerShell.
You have the ability to import runbooks from Orchestrator.
Oh, yeah, we'll have that capability of taking Orchestrator runbooks and transferring them into to PowerShell to graphical runbooks. Yes, we have that.
So when you get around to exporting a graphical one as a textual file,
Yes.
you're going to make it difficult to re-import, for me to make changes to that and then re-import it
No,
back
you
in?
could re-import it as a textual, for sure.
Okay, but it won't re-render as a graphical.
But to go from textual to graphical
Yeah.
is a very difficult problem, so we
Okay.
just decided not to try to do it.
Great,
Okay?
thanks.
Okay, 2 questions. I'd like to hear a little bit more on the textual to graphical. What are you doing in this area? So if we have PowerShell scripts that we would like to convert into graphical modules, is there a way to do that, or are you working on that? We have not talked about having an automatic converter from textual to graphical. I mean, right now you can take scripts and import them into our system, and we will convert Right.
them into workflows, textual workflows.
Right.
If you want to convert them into graphical, then you would have to do that manually.
Okay,
Yeah.
how would that, go ahead.
So I guess one other thing, if your scripts are pretty small and modular, you can actually import them in as runbooks and then call each as just small runbooks, and then you can do the graphical designer to call those runbooks within.
Okay, so that's the thing that, if we're going to present to executives or something
Yep.
like that, there's so much automation that's done behind the scenes of scripting, it's hard to represent it without creating PowerPoint, presentations that are not real reproducible. This seems like an excellent way to be able to show, hey,
Absolutely.
this is really in the tool itself. Here are scripts that we had before that we've used for automation. We pulled into Azure Automation. This is how we show it graphically.
Yes.
And so when you say do it manually, what does
Well,
that mean?
so you could take your scripts that you have now. There's 2 ways you could get them into our system. One is you could just package them as modules, which is not that difficult. And you basically put your scripts, and there's just a couple of files, and you can import them as a module, and they would show up as commandlets in the system. Second is you could pull them into the system as runbooks, all right, which is pretty much the same thing, some minor differences. But then both of those are available in that library that then you can build larger scale runbooks that are the visual ones. But
Okay.
see,
So you'd pull it in as kind of a run book within a run book kind
Yeah.
of thing. Yeah.
But see,
Okay.
all the work that you've done is already saved.
Right.
Because you've pulled it into the system just as is.
Right.
And then you just put together the high level process in a graphical way that then you can show to someone else.
Awesome.
So,
So completely different question now from more the economic side. What's the pricing model for Azure Automation?
Azure Automation is priced by runbook job minutes, So the length of time that a job actually runs. And it's priced at 2 cents for 10 minutes,
Okay.
which is really, really cheap.
That's
but we also
really cheap.
give away 500 minutes for free, so you can have certain accounts have 500 minutes, and then if you have an account that's using a ton of minutes, you could pay for that account. So.
Right, 2 cents, 10 minutes.
Yes.
That's all I
Yeah.
have to remember. Now, so it doesn't matter how many runbooks I have.
No, the number of runbooks, the number of any of the other assets in the system doesn't matter.
So it's not like storage space that you're paying for in that.
Yeah, I guess we figured the storage space is so cheap for us it really
Right.
doesn't matter. So
I think that's a great idea.
yeah,
So-
good.
Right.
And
Thank you.
actually, when the job runs too, it's not when it's starting up. It's not if it ever gets suspended. You're only actually charged for the time it's actually running.
Right.
So
So given all of that, why would any company really do this internally with Orchestrator or SMA or anything else if you can do everything through Azure Automation? And my ask, I don't know, is that a loaded question?
are you a marketer working for Microsoft?
No,
I
I
mean,
get
there's-
the joy of spanning both management and technical, so
Yeah.
that's a fun place to be.
No, there's lots of reasons why some companies have not moved to the cloud yet. You know, they still have rules about staying local and staying private. So they would use SMA or they'd use Orchestrator. But I
Right.
think as you know, it's pretty inevitable that things are moving to the cloud. Just the cost itself, the way that you can use a service. You don't have to manage a service now. You don't have to manage the Orchestrator service, which actually takes someone to manage it.
Right.
You can use Azure Automation, and we do all the management, and you just
Right.
use it. So
Yeah, and there's going to be the ability to take runbooks that you've created in SMA, run them in Azure Automation,
Yes.
fairly transportable between the environments.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So now I'm trying to think in my mind, what is it that would be proprietary? I'm the SQL Server Cloud Infrastructure Manager, so for Boeing, and so for us there is a very large concern about what we put in private versus public cloud. So
Yes.
we have to figure out, what does it mean to have automation in the cloud versus data in the cloud. And I'm trying to figure out in this particular scenario what would be the roadblocks to putting things in the cloud and automation. I don't know if you have other companies that have kind of dealt with that, what their major hurdles are of why they would consider not using Azure Automation.
Could you talk about many hundreds of subscriptions? I think that's one of the roadblocks. We have 364 subscriptions, and I'm at 163 myself. So
in Azure.
yeah.
For
So
for what
Yeah,
company?
why do you have so many subscriptions?
well, that's the problem. I don't want to be negative. That's one of the things that Microsoft is flawed in. Everything that you're creating is for a single subscription and a single subscription mentality. But we have 20 different software developers for 20 different projects, and they can't interact with each other. So
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
it's just like, it's the whole NT40 domain
Well,
versus Active Directory discussion. So
I mean, there's a couple of things that were brought up here. One is like the sharing. We're going to have a sharing model where you can actually export runbooks, not only runbooks, but all of the assets that they depend on. So we're going to have what to call automation
Automation
pack,
packs, yeah.
where you can actually export everything and import it into another account if you want. But the security piece is partly we have this hybrid now, so you can actually run the pieces on premise. So the only thing that's still missing there is that the assets, so your credentials, are up in the cloud. But we're also working on a way for you to keep those on premise. You can
That would be
author
key.
your runbooks in the cloud using
Right.
our services, run them on prem, but all of your secrets are on prem.
Right.
So, yes.
So that's
We know about that, and that's on our roadmap.
awesome. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, I have just two questions also. I'm wondering about the logging aspect of Azure Automation. So I'm using SMA as of now, and I kind of need multi-level logging just to be able to kind of separate out kind of what I do in kind of authoring and the mistakes I do there, and kind of see that the code kind of fits, and then kind of log for the administrators of the runbooks. So I'm using now Verbose and Debug, but
Yes.
as I understand, kind of Debug is gone in automation. Are there any plans to kind of support more levels of logging?
Yeah, so, yeah.
Here, Joe.
Hi, my name is Joe Levy. I'm a program manager on Azure Automation. So the debug stream actually doesn't work very well in unattended sessions, which are what Azure Automation is running. we've been working with PowerShell to introduce another stream called the info stream, which will work to integrate into Azure Automation, which will help because while you could write that stuff that's in debug to verbose, there's a ton of stuff in verbose, right? It's very verbose. So the nice thing about the info stream is you can write information to it and also tag that information with certain tags so that when you actually want to filter what's in that stream within a runbook that came out, you can say, only give me the things in the info stream that had this tag to specifically get your debug information and not things written by other commandlets to the info stream, for example.
Because I assume you're also planning, excuse me, planning to do something about the monitoring side, because as using SMA, I use SCOM to actually monitor and do alerting on stuff that happens in the automation world. But that will also be kind of necessary if we're going to go to Azure automation. So we have to have something that kind of alerts about some processing that doesn't actually complete or something like that. And are there any plans to kind of integrate that into whatever you're doing in Azure?
So I think it's a slightly different question, which is there a way to automatically know if runbooks fail?
No, just because it ties into the logging side. So you log just to get the information about whatever happens in your runbook. If you're kind of doing a lot of functions that calls a lot of kind of different assets, like databases, whatever, and you need kind of to log that, but you also need to aggregate and catch the whatever errors occurs and can maybe do some alerting on that and get people to do something about it.
So one of the things, at least in the graphical runbook space, we're going to be able to put in ways for you to, at least on errors and exceptions, for you to do special work. But I could see that if there's this other stream, this info stream, we could very easily allow you to configure, what happens if this certain thing happens on the info stream when this runbook runs, and then we'd allow you to then call another commandlet or call another runbook that would then send an email or whatever that you want based on that stream. So we have this in our plans for the graphical space for you to be able to do these sorts of, if something goes wrong on my runbook, do this very easily.
Another thing that I think that we're looking at, although we haven't started any work on this, is integration with with OMS.
Yeah.
So we'd like to be able to take all of those streams, put them into what was the old Ops Insights. So you'd be able to do some of that analysis on that jobs and use Ops Insights as the monitoring there. So
that's good. And the last question is about like checkpointing. Are there any plans about if you do kind of a complex runbook that you have a lot of variables in memory that kind of you might need later on? And are there any plans of actually persisting those through the actual checkpointing? Because now you might need to actually you have to write those variables into the database and get those back after the checkpoints.
So like when a runbook is checkpointed, the entire state of the runbook is persisted into the database.
Also the variables?
Everything, yes.
Okay.
Everything, all variables, the state of all the objects, the field states. And that's one of the reasons why in standard workflow, you don't have access to commandlet methods, is because all of those objects have to be persistible at any time. And that's why you have to use inline script to get methods from commandlets. But yes, when you do a checkpoint workflow, the entire state, including all variables, goes to the database. Yeah.
Thank you.
Not sure. Oh, there we go. It works. So kind of going back to the other point the gentleman mentioned about reasons why we wouldn't want the solution. And don't worry, I have a solution to the end of this problem. But my concern is that I'm not the person who's writing the code all the time, right? I've got a team of people that would be writing scripts and run books. And so, if one of them happens to put a do while and ends up in an infinite loop and I have 100 of those, I could have a runaway process, basically a billing clock that's just running indefinitely. And I understand that that's our responsibility, but what would help, with many scheduling engines, you have a duration, maximum duration where something could run for. Can we build that into this?
that was a feature we were looking at, but we also have another feature called Fair Share. That
I mean, this is a good time for a question to you. So right now we have a feature called Fair Share where before it was like 30 minutes. A runbook could run for 30 minutes, and then we would suspend it, and then we would start it up again later. This was just so everybody using our service could get fair access to the runbook workers.
Okay.
We've since upped that to 3 hours because we've got some feedback that some people legitimately had runbooks that ran more than 30 minutes, and they just kept restarting, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
But it sounds like what you want is the ability to configure a particular runbook. Say, if this thing runs for more than 20 minutes, stop the dang thing and send
Or
me an
even
email.
better, have a limit that we can set by default, and even further in your RBAC discussion, maybe say, here's a specific action they can't do, like change that timer.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great feedback. We'll take that.
Yeah,
take that
if
as
you
a
put
feature.
that on user voice, we look very closely at all of the user voice requests. So definitely post that. That's awesome. We could look into doing something like that.
Okay, I'll get with one of you to find out where that is. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I can.
To monitor. Runbooks have the ability to monitor anything, including themselves or other jobs in the system. So you could have something that runs, looks at all jobs in the system, compares the start date with the
Create a
current
watchdog
time.
runbook.
Yeah, and goes and stops them or something.
Thank you.
Anybody? Any other questions? Well, thank you. Oh, we have one more. Yes.
So it's come a long way since last year. I know you guys were working on this. I went to a focus group on this, where it was going last year, and I can see it's kind of a moving target. You're got to add a lot of more features, or a lot of things you're thinking about doing. When is this going to be kind of nailed down, and you're going to start offering training on it?
Well, I haven't heard anything about training, but I'm sure that's going to be coming next. I think we feel pretty good about what the feature set we have right now, but I think we have another probably 6 months before we feel just absolutely ecstatic about where our feature set is at and all the little things we want in there. I'll take that back to the team and start asking, when we'll have training on this, and I'm sure that's going to start coming up, but I haven't heard anything yet.
Okay, thank you.
What would you expect that to look like? Would that be like online training, self-training, or
well,
tutorials online? What would it
yeah,
be?
I would say online training would be sufficient.
Okay.
Classroom based.
Okay, cool. Like, within the PM team, we do blogging on most of the key features of our service, and so you'll start to see blogs coming out that explain in detail how to use pieces of it, and plus we also have Microsoft content as well, which in more detail will explain things. But it sounds like you want more of a step-by-step.
Right.
Here's a project to do. Go do it, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, because there's a lot of pieces here and there, but it's hard to put it all together without
Right.
having a formal training class that says, okay,
Right.
this is how you get started from beginning to end.
And we're really aware of that too, that we don't want folks to go into the service and just see a blank screen and go, what do I do next? So we want to make it very clear how to get started into it and sort of ramp up.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.